When I first started binge-watching strange and unexplained story content during the 2 weeks to slow the spread of COVID, there were two storytellers whose content I became completely engrossed in. Bedtime stories, and this other guy, Mr. Ballin. The stories I heard on both of their channels, particularly the military ones, made me wonder how many stories like this might really be out there. I was not disappointed, and here we are, a few years later. For fans of the strange, dark, and mysterious, and for all my fellow abusers of the like button, by this point, Mr. Ballin, aka John B. Allen, needs no introduction. John is hands down, in my opinion, and many others, one of the best storytellers out there, maybe too good, because after listening to his stories on long road trips, my wife now refuses to let me take our kids out in the woods overnight. Now, many of you are aware that John is a Navy SEAL, now medically retired from service due to, well, what you would expect from special operations. Being run into the ground for years and getting hit by grenades isn't great for your long-term health. But far from his own conventional brand of military stories, he's also seen some things that can only be described as paranormal. John has already told this story on his own channel, so I did think it was best to ask if I could reproduce it here in the style of wartime stories. I'm very happy he said yes, because John's story is one that has stuck with me ever since I first heard it. You don't need to meet him in the flesh to pick up on this, and he probably doesn't want me to say this because he's just that kind of guy, but John is probably one of the nicest, most down-to-earth, humble, and blatantly honest people I've ever had the good pleasure of meeting. And while I often hold a reserved view of my own and many other strange experiences I've heard about, John's story is, well, his is a story that I can only put in the basket labeled 100% supernatural. When John was in his late teens, before he enlisted in the Navy, he accompanied a few good friends to a cabin located in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Every good story starts like this, a cabin. What was supposed to be a fun few days of snowboarding quickly became one of his most unsettling experiences. As recalled by Mr. Ballin himself, this is the true story of his encounter with the strange, dark, and mysterious. I'm Luke LaManna, and this is Wartime Stories. When I started Wartime Stories, most of my focus was first on research and just telling stories. I did not have time to suddenly figure out how to run everything else the channel needed. You put all this time into writing, recording, editing, and then suddenly you're trying to figure out how to build a website, sell merch, manage orders, and whether any of it is even going to work. That's why Shopify has been such a huge help for me. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from brands like Wartime Stories to companies just getting started. It gives you ready-to-use templates so you can build a clean online store that matches your brand. It has built-in AI tools for product descriptions, headlines, and product photos, and it handles all the important stuff in one place: inventory, payments, analytics, shipping, returns, and so much more. It also helps people actually find you with easy email and social media campaigns. And if you get stuck, they've got 24/7 support. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/wartime stories. Go to shopify.com/wartime stories. That's shopify.com/wartime stories. Hey, real quick, watch on Spotify. If you're subscribed to Spotify Premium, you don't get any Spotify ads on our show. All right, let's get back to it.
Nick, can you help me bring this one upstairs?
Yeah, Mom, coming.
Nice to be back up here. You gonna stop being a wimp and hit the Widowmaker with us this year? What's the matter? Car sick or something? What's up?
Kind of weird being back up here.
Yeah. Feels different.
You think this is like too soon? You know, since his dad.
I mean, it was Nick's idea. Maybe he needs this, you know? Last few weeks have sucked.
Yeah.
Hey, losers, hurry up and bring your bags in. Keep the boards in the car. We still got daylight.
You want to hit the slopes now?
That's the plan.
See? Come on, Alan. You heard the man. Hurry up.
Yeah. Okay.
When I was around 16 years old, I was an avid snowboarder. I picked it up around age 12 and always used to hit the slopes with two of my very good friends, Wolf and Nick. Every winter, Nick would invite Wolf and I to join him at their family cabin in the White Mountains of New Hampshire for a weekend of snowboarding. It was a blast, and each time the three of us went up, we were joined by Nick's mom and dad. However, the winter I turned 16, tragedy struck when Nick's dad unexpectedly passed away. His death hit all of us pretty hard, and when the time came to plan our annual trip to the mountains, I remember speaking to Wolf and being like, I don't even know if it's appropriate to ask about this trip. Nick was incredibly close with his dad, and every time we went up to the mountains, he was always with us. Like, how could we possibly go on this trip without him being there, you know? But one day Nick called us up and was like, hey, so are we still going to do the snowboarding trip to the cabin in New Hampshire? Wolf and I talked about it and decided, yeah, let's just go with it. Maybe they wanted to do something that's a fond memory of their dad, their husband. At this point, Nick's father had only been gone for a few months, so as we drove up to New Hampshire, the vibe was noticeably different. We always drove up together in the same car, so having this empty space that was supposed to be filled by Nick's dad was really hard to ignore. Anyhow, we press on and make the trip up to New Hampshire, with plans to be there for 3 days. This next part is going to be a lot of explaining the layout of the cabin, but I promise it plays into all the strange stuff that follows. So, Nick's cabin was very small and built on the side of a mountain. If you think about the way a mountain works, it's a slope. So in order to have a house level on a mountain, a portion of it needs to be on stilts, the portion that's hanging off the mountain. And then the other part of the house is kind of embedded in the mountain itself. When you drive up to the house, there's a wraparound porch that goes around it. The majority of it is on the stilted section of the house. So if you're on the wraparound porch, your footsteps are going to echo. When you go to open the front door, you'd find that it swings open inwardly. There were sleigh bells on the inside of the door, so anytime it swung open, you would clearly hear those sleigh bells ringing. So when you step into the house, your right foot would be in the kitchen, you'd be standing on linoleum, and your left foot would be on shag carpet, which is like the dining room. That's the way the house is laid out. As soon as you walk in, kitchen on your right, dining room on your left. If you keep going left, you're going to enter this living room. And if you turn around in the living room and look up, you'd see a lofted second floor. If you were going into that living space but stopped about halfway through and looked to your right, there'd be this one lone hallway. So this hallway is basically going into the mountain itself. If you think about the layout of the house, you have a portion of it that's sitting in the mountain and a portion of the house that's on stilts. Well, this hallway leads into the section of the house that's in the mountain. If you go down this hallway and it turns left, it brings you to one room. That room is where me, Nick, and Wolf would stay every time we went snowboarding at this mountain. It's what we in the military would call a corner-fed room. You open the door and immediately to your right is a bunk bed. I would always sleep on the bottom bunk and Wolf would sleep on the top bunk with our feet facing the door. In the center of the room, with the remaining space, there was a queen-size bed. It was basically in all of the free space that was left over in the room. It was sitting right in the middle of the room, and that's where Nick would sleep. So basically, the room was completely packed with 3 places to sleep and really not much else. There was a very small space between the queen bed and the bunk bed, so you could walk between those two, but that was about it. So that layout is very important, and soon you'll see why. We load in, hit the slopes with what little daylight was left, and come back to the cabin. Nick, Wolf, and I decided that we were going to crash super early so we could get up at the crack of dawn to have a full day on the mountain. But the excitement of the trip got to us, so we stayed up gaming for a bit. Then maybe around 11 or 12 o'clock at night, Nick, who again is in the queen-size bed, and then Wolf, who was in the top bunk, both fall asleep. I, on the other hand, was still wide awake. What always struck me about being in this room was that when you turn off all the electronics and you're just laying in bed, it is pitch black. There are no windows. You're in the segment of the house that's, in the mountain. It's totally dark. On top of all this, there weren't really any neighbors nearby because Nick's family had purchased this house when it used to be part of an active ski resort. But it wasn't anymore. Most people that were living there had left or sold their property, but a few people had decided to stay. Nick's family was one of them. So it was really just us in this cabin on an abandoned ski resort. There were really no streetlights. There were virtually no neighbors. It's so dark and so quiet. I mean, basically no white noise. Just silence and darkness.
Wolf, you awake? Damn it. 3 a.m. What the hell? Okay, if you fall asleep now, you'll still get 2 hours. That's plenty. Come on, fall asleep. Just fall asleep. Must be one of Nick's brothers. They didn't close the door? Why didn't they shut the door?
One last detail that needs to be brought up before we get into actually what happens is that Nick had 2 older brothers. They were in their 30s and we were 16 years old. We were expecting one of them, and we didn't know which, to swing by the house at some point over the next few days. That's what Nick's mom had said. Nick had kind of reiterated it, and I think that Wolf and I understood that, now that Nick's father was gone, that they were just trying to kind of find a way to fill the void that was left from his father passing. So we were expecting over the course of that weekend for one of the 2 brothers to come to this house and stay with us for a night. I'd never met either of Nick's brothers, but I knew they existed. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I know that one of them is probably going to show up at some point tonight or tomorrow. Oh man, just bringing this all up again is giving me goosebumps. That night, as I'm laying in bed, I'm thinking about how dark and quiet it is. The only light in the room was coming from the red display of the little red digital clock. It didn't emit much light, but in pure darkness like that, it was shining like a beacon. I just could not fall asleep. I remember I got to a place where I started counting how many hours of sleep I might get if I fell asleep right then and there, which is never a good sign. You're not close to sleeping if you're like, okay, if I fell asleep now, I'd get 3 hours and 22 minutes of sleep, right? I think it was around 3 in the morning when I looked at the clock thinking, wow, it's gotten so late and I'm still awake. And that's when I heard footsteps on the wraparound porch. So you're probably thinking, how did you not raise a red flag immediately? Let me tell you, in real time, in real life, your brain goes to great lengths to convince you that everything is okay. It really takes an enormous amount of anomalies to stack up for your brain to say something's wrong. So that's what happened this first night. I hear footsteps on the wraparound porch, and I immediately assume, even though it's like 3 in the morning, that it's got to be one of Nick's brothers arriving to be part of this weekend getaway. So I really actually didn't think anything of it. I actually just thought, well, if he happens to come in here to check on us, I'll just pretend to be asleep to avoid any awkward conversation with a guy I don't know. That's all I'm thinking about at this moment. Not worried, not scared, not anything. I listen to the footsteps on the wraparound porch, and then the front door opens. I can hear the sleigh bells that are on the door chime as it swung open. Again, no part of me is concerned about this. I am thinking it's a little bit weird that they're arriving at 3 a.m, but we knew that his brothers had these weird work schedules, so they might show up in the middle of the night. So it was just whatever. Sleigh bells ring, and then I hear what sounds like a pot, like a kitchen pot, fall and hit the linoleum floor in the kitchen. This was the first thing that really stood out to me as being odd. Not only that, but whoever just came into the house didn't bother shutting the door behind them. I figured, maybe they're bringing their stuff in and left the door open to make things easier. This thinking about this is just really making me uncomfortable. So I hear footsteps on the wraparound porch. The door opens. I can hear the sleigh bells. A pot falls and hits the linoleum floor. Then these footsteps continued into the house, where you're on a concrete slab and there should be no sound. Like, I shouldn't be hearing echoing footsteps. It sounded like they were on the wraparound porch still, but the noise was getting closer and closer to me. So I hear these footsteps. The door hasn't shut. The front door is wide open. We're in the middle of winter here. We're in the middle of nowhere, and I'm thinking about that, but I'm still thinking it's got to be one of Nick's brothers. It has to be one of Nick's brothers. The footsteps continue through the house, and they stop about halfway through the living room. Then they turned right and began to walk down the hallway towards our room, coming to a stop right outside our closed bedroom door. So I'm laying there, my feet facing the door, and in the pitch darkness, I'm just thinking, why didn't they shut the front door? Of all the weird things that were happening, the thing that really just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up was, why didn't they shut the front door? As I was thinking this, that fear rising within me, the bedroom door started to open. From my position on the bottom bunk, there's a space that I can see clear as day. Whoever walks in the room, I'm going to see them when they walk past the foot of the bed. But because of the top bunk, my view is actually a bit obscured, and I wouldn't be able to make out someone's face. I could really only see their middle section. So the door opens, and this shadow figure walks into the room. And even in pitch darkness, this thing was blacker than black. This thing walks into the room, and its upper body is blocked by the top bunk, so I wouldn't have been able to see its head or face, but its hips are so high that I can't even really see them. Those are at the level that I would expect someone's upper body or head to be at, meaning that this figure that's walked in is extremely tall. Like, I'm talking maybe 10 feet tall. I was instantly frozen with terror, totally petrified. I was like, it's not Nick's brother. And even if this wasn't paranormal, this is terrifying. Even if that's just some dude who's come into the house, this is a really, really bad situation. But what I'm looking at doesn't make sense. It's an unnaturally tall person. As I'm watching it, this thing makes a military-style facing movement and begins to walk down the aisle between the queen-size bed in the middle of the room and the bunk bed where I am. It's walking down right next to me. I'm literally sitting there unable to move, like I can't do anything. I am truly frozen with terror, and all I remember thinking is, whatever happens, just don't bend down and look at me. That will ruin my life. If this thing so much as just looks at me, that's it. I'm done. So it walks down the aisle, and it does another quick movement, but now it's facing away from me and facing towards Nick in the center of the room. From there, I watch as it leans over Nick as if it were bowing, and then lowers itself through Nick's bed and just disappears. In the movies, this would be the point where whoever's hiding would make a run for it. But in real life, there's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as people disappearing into the ground. So I'm expecting this thing to just get back up again, I couldn't comprehend that this thing had just disappeared into the bed. That's not possible. Where is it? I clearly heard the door open. I heard the bells. I heard the pot. I heard the footsteps. I saw the door open. I saw the thing walk in. I watched it walk down the aisle. I watched it bend over. It's in the room. Where is it? And for hours, I mean all night, I laid there, absolutely petrified, expecting this thing to come back up and just look at me. That was my biggest fear. Whatever this thing was, I did not want it to look at me. So that was the worst, just laying there, frozen. I felt like I could only move my eyes the entire night.
Morning, John.
Morning.
Everything okay?
Just, didn't really sleep. Thanks. Thank you. Hey, did either of your two sons stop by at any point last night?
No.
Oh, okay.
John, I heard my husband here last night, too.
What?
Finally, around 5 or 6 in the morning, I hear Nick's mom in the kitchen making coffee. For the first time in hours, I actually felt safe enough to pull myself out of bed and leave the room. Now, you have to understand that even though this was a horrible situation that I still can't really explain, I know that she has just lost her husband. So the idea of approaching this subject, which is effectively going to turn into ghosts, right? Like, am I seriously going to go out there and start talking about ghosts to the woman who just lost her husband? It just felt really inappropriate. And so I was really struggling with how I wanted to communicate what had happened. So I went to the table and she poured me a cup of coffee. Now, she'd known me for a long time, so she definitely picked up that something was wrong. She was kind of sizing me up a little bit to see what was bothering me. The only thing I could think to do was just ask, hey, did either of your two sons stop by at any point last night? She looked at me and was like, no. And I'm sitting there like, okay. I must have had a reaction that was obvious to her, and she said something that I'll never forget. She said, I heard my husband here last night too. Hearing that made everything so much worse. On the one hand, you have a situation where she is confirming something that part of me hopes is just a bad dream. On the other hand, she's now saying this thing, whatever I saw, is her husband. So I immediately assumed that she has somehow figured out what I'm stressed about, and because she's bereaved, she's created a story where her husband is now in the house, looking over us. I really believe that she didn't hear anything, that she had just somehow understood that I had had this weird feeling, and she turned it into, oh, my husband's in the house. I just couldn't ask any more questions at that point. I felt like I had set her up through this awkward exchange, and I felt really bad that we were even having this conversation. I also thought, if that's true, I don't want to have this conversation. I really was just dumbfounded on what to do in this situation. And this is night 1. There are 2 more nights of this, and it gets worse. Nick and Wolf eventually come out of the bedroom and enter the dining room. The same way I felt reserved about talking to Nick's mom about what happened, I had the same feelings about Nick because it was his father. And I just felt like it would be inappropriate. But Wolf, he's not a member of the family, and he's my buddy. So I pulled him aside and I kind of told him what was going on as best I could. I was like, I could have sworn I heard someone in the house last night. He's like, yeah, you probably dreamt it. That's what this is. And I was like, no, I wasn't dreaming. But I can't make sense of it. At this point, Nick actually overheard the conversation, and I very much kind of cut ties with what I was talking about. I was like, yeah, I just thought I heard something last night. It's just me freaking myself out. Around this time, I looked at both of them and asked if they could do me a favor. I said, when we get back from snowboarding tonight, can we make sure that I fall asleep before you guys? They just gave me this look and were like, all right, weirdo, whatever. My big plan was to just go to bed really, really early because I didn't sleep the night before, so I'm thinking, oh, I'll just fall asleep right away. So we snowboard for the day and have a great time. My mind is completely off of what happened. I'm actually starting to convince myself that what I'd seen had to have been, sleep paralysis or some such. People say it's like a really intense dream. I was just like, it had to be something like this. This is too weird. It has to be something explainable. Turns out it wasn't. We get back from snowboarding and I'm immediately going to bed. I mean, it was like maybe 6 o'clock. But as I'm laying there, all I'm thinking about is what happened the night before. And lo and behold, I can't fall asleep. Eventually, Nick and Wolf come into the room and they're trying their best to stay awake so that I can fall asleep. But it gets later and later and I'm still wide awake. Now I'm back to that, okay, if I fall asleep now, 6 hours of sleep thing. And they finally just said, hey man, we're tired, we're going to bed. Of course, they're out cold in minutes, and I'm wide awake. I was so upset with myself, like, you idiot, why didn't you just fall asleep? I remember the only thing that I did that really made this real, looking back on it, is I put a knife, like a kitchen knife, in the bed springs above me as some form of protection, I guess. I'm laying in bed, and I'm constantly looking over at the digital clock, and it was probably around 3 a.m. It was late enough that it was like, okay, this is about the time that it happened last night. And my heart just sunk when I heard those footsteps on the wraparound porch again. They sounded the same as they did the night before. And I was like, that has to be one of Nick's brothers. But the door opens, I hear the sleigh bells, I hear the freaking pot fall on the ground. It was like deja vu. And again, referencing how movies would portray this, the person who's me in the movie is, okay, I'm going to get this knife and I'm going to position myself over here because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to protect myself. But in real life, I'm like, this thing's going to be in my room potentially. It happened last night. It's apparently happening again. Please, for the love of God, don't bow into me the way it bowed into the floor the night before. Don't look at me. It will ruin my life if some entity looks directly at me. The thing walks down the hall and comes straight up to the door. And I'm looking at the knife that's right above me, completely petrified. I cannot move. I'm drenched in sweat just from the few seconds that it's taking this thing to go from the door to the front of my bedroom door, because I know what's happening again. I'm not crazy, it's just happening again. What the hell is this? I can't reach for the knife. I'm so worried about making any noise that would alert this thing that I can only move my eyes. I remember thinking that I shouldn't even move my eyes too quickly because it might hear that. Like, this is a primal level of fear. The door opens. It walks into the room, and it goes right past my bed. It walks down the aisle between me and Nick. I remember what happened before, where it folded into Nick and disappeared, and I'm just thinking to myself, please don't turn and bow into me. Please, whatever happens, just don't do that. So it turns away from me, and it does the same thing it did the night before. Folds onto Nick and disappears into the ground. Gone. All night I lay there, not catching a single moment of sleep. When I heard Nick's mom out in the other room come morning, it was such a relief. I didn't give a crap about being polite at this point. I wasn't going to try to, distance myself from the conversation around ghosts. I was going out there to be like, what is wrong with this house? I go right out into the living room and I tell her everything in as acute detail as I possibly can. As I'm telling her this, her reaction just didn't line up. Her reaction was not surprise, terror, or confusion. It was empathy. She felt bad for me. It was like she just didn't understand what I was telling her, and I said that to her. I mean, in every detail I can possibly muster, and at the end of it all, towards the end, she just kind of stops me and says, "John, I told you yesterday, and again, I heard it last night. That's just my husband. I heard him last night too. Got nothing to worry about." I was like, no, that cannot be. That cannot be what it is. And she was like, "I heard him open the door. I heard the pot fall. I heard him walk through the house. I'm assuming he went into Nick's room again with you guys." I'm like, what is happening? Now I'm just totally beside myself. I was crying during this conversation. They weren't even tears of sadness or fear as much as just like, what the hell is going on? Look, I needed my mom. I mean, I felt so helpless, and no offense to Nick's mother, but I felt like I was talking to a lunatic. But at the same time, she's recalling the exact same things as me. How do I put that together? I remember thinking, I need to leave. I need to get out of here. I can't be here anymore. But how was I going to make that happen? Nick's mom and Wolf and Nick, they're not leaving. And it was pretty clear that Nick's mom liked the fact that she was apparently hearing her husband walking around the cabin. We're here for one more night, so what was I going to tell my parents? Like, hey, come pick me up in New Hampshire because I'm seeing ghosts. Like, this is a trip that I looked forward to every year, and I honestly was not prepared to have those conversations with my mom and dad. I was not prepared to be like, let me tell you about the ghost I saw over the past 2 days. I just kind of resigned and decided to stay. In retrospect, I think I should have called my parents, but it was such a confusing moment that I had no blueprint for how to handle it. Nick and Wolf finally got up and basically walked in on the bizarre scene of me crying as Nick's mom is reassuring me, about her husband being in the house. Wolf pretty much immediately looks at me to get a gauge on what happened, and he can see it all over my face. I've been crying, and I told him what happened. Nick was always a pretty stoic guy, and he was just unaffected. Wolf, on the other hand, was more inclined to believe something was happening. He didn't know if it was a ghost or not, but he certainly understood that something strange was going on. The fact that Nick's mom was reinforcing my argument, yeah, I heard him too. I heard the door open. Yeah, I was upstairs. I heard him walk through the house. Probably wasn't helping matters. Nick didn't want to hear any of it, and I don't blame him. It was probably super uncomfortable for him. Like, are we seriously talking about his late father haunting this very cabin? Before we hit the slopes that day, Nick's mom brought us to a local store, and we bought a coffee table because they'd been looking to replace the one that was in their house. Basically, instead of turning down the hallway towards our room, if you just keep walking into the lofted area, there was this coffee table at the foot of the stairs that had a landline telephone. I guess the one they already had was broken or too old or whatever, and Nick's mom thought it was time to replace it. So we went out and got it. We snowboard, we come back, and we help offload the coffee table into the house. We put it at the foot of the stairs, and we start getting ready for bed. That night, I was ruthless in trying to keep Wolf and Nick awake. I mean, I wasn't even trying to make jokes out of it. I was like straight up kicking Wolf's bunk and shaking Nick if I even suspected they were dozing off, because I'm absolutely terrified. It was like the opposite of how excited you get before Christmas and you can't sleep. The final nail in the coffin, if you will, is that we found neither of Nick's two brothers were going to be making the trip. So no one is going to be about. No one should be at that house except for us. After all of my attempts to keep Nick and Wolf awake, they fall asleep. Everyone's asleep. The house is pitch black. It's silent. And around 2 or 3 in the morning, I hear those footsteps on the wraparound porch. The door opens, and I hear the sleigh bells ringing. A pot falls on the ground, and the footsteps walk into the house like clockwork. This is the 3rd time that this has happened. So, in a way, this was the first time that I was kind of expecting something to happen. It was going to walk down the hall, come in the room, walk next to me, fold into Nick, and then that's it. It's strange, but I actually felt a bit more secure in knowing that something was about to happen, but on that final night, things were different. It walked into the house, but instead of going down the hallway towards our room, it kept walking into the lofted area. And the loft area from where I was laying was basically straight ahead of where our room was. Like, if it wasn't for the wall, I'd be looking right at this thing. At this point, I'm basically waiting for it to walk through the wall. As crazy as it sounds, I'm just anticipating something coming through the wall. But after a long pause, I start to hear it go up the stairs towards the second floor. God, just remembering the creaks of its steps above makes my skin crawl. Now, keep in mind, this thing has sunk into the ground 2 nights in a row and disappeared. So now my fear is that it's going to literally come down through the ceiling, through the bunk, right on top of me. The footsteps stopped on the upper floor, where Nick's mom was asleep. So I'm in bed, petrified once again. I got my stupid knife sitting in the underside of the bed above me, and hours go by as I wait for my literal worst nightmare to come true. The thought of some entity coming through the ceiling on top of me, or even just watching it as it floats down into Nick, or bringing me to the edge of an all-out panic. None of this made any sense to me, and yet it was real. This was actually happening. I was now coming up on 3 days without sleep, and at some point that night, exhaustion got the better of me, my eyes fluttered shut, and I somehow drifted off. At some point in the morning, probably like 5 a.m., I wake up and I hear Nick's mom. But this time, it didn't sound like she was making coffee. It sounded like something was wrong. I couldn't place it, but it just sounded like she was acting emotional somehow. I couldn't tell if she was crying or not, but honestly, I didn't linger much on the thought, it's my last day here, I'm leaving today, I'm up, I'm out. As soon as I exit the bedroom, I walk out of the hallway and I look to the left into the dining room expecting to see Nick's mom, and she's not there. She's actually over at the foot of the stairs in the living room area, next to this new coffee table we had just put in. And she's standing over this coffee table at the foot of the stairs, and she's crying. She looked at me and she said, "Come here." And she gets down on her knees and she's looking at the table. As I approached her, now I realized that her tears weren't of grief or sadness. They were of joy. And when I looked down at the coffee table, I could see why. Scratched into the table's surface were the words, "I love you." That was it. When I saw that, I was like, I'm done. Honestly, that whole ordeal ended my friendships with Nick and Wolf. I never stopped snowboarding, but I didn't ever go back to that cabin, even though I know Wolf did the very next year. I do have some theories about what could have happened. It's possible that Nick's mom could have created a narrative in her grief. I made it about her husband, and then she could have just as easily scratched the "I love you" into the table. That could have been her. I mean, it's also possible that she had sleep paralysis and I had sleep paralysis, and somehow we synchronized and had the same vision. But to be honest, I believe that what I saw was a ghost. I believe something supernatural came into the house, walked around, and interacted with the physical world. While I have talked about God knows how many ghost stories in my time, this is the only time in my entire life that I've had anything paranormal happen to me personally. I don't have any other stories like that in the time before or since. Anyways,
I'm rambling now about that, but that my opinion is, if you could do that, I bet that would actually solve a lot of your infrastructure needs.
Yeah.
And definitely don't think that like you should just magically think or act differently. You have strengths in an area that most people don't have, which is way harder to have, which is the creative side.
This is such a trip because I've been a fan of your show even long before I ever met you. And this is like a different side of it. This is like Mr. Ballin does therapy.
Yeah, dude.
Man, because I've talked to therapists and they don't help me with this. So
no. Well, the thing with this is like it's like
it's
so
very niche. Yeah,
so niche. It's like this crazy thing, man.
Exactly. The other thing, because we're kind of redoing your personal story, we've already got the episode lined up, and after reading through your story, I realized that this is actually like some.
Yeah, dude.
It was really, really trippy.
Yeah, dude.
So something I do.
I can't wait to hear it.
Okay, cool. Something I always do on the back end of the episodes is I kind of do a little after action in the credits where I either just tell a personal story about something stupid I did while I was in or just something correlating with the story to kind of give people. For this, I wanted to see if you would be interested in doing like a short interview about your story.
Yeah, dude, of course. Send it.
The first thing I wanted to point out was that Nick's mom verified your experience. That first night after you woke up, she said that she heard everything that you did.
Yep.
I don't know if Nick's mom would have visited the cabin in the time between her husband passing and you guys going up there for the snowboarding trip. Do you think that she would have for any reason? Or was that trip that you guys took that winter probably the first time anyone had been to the cabin since he passed?
No, actually, that definitely, that we're talking, his father died so close to the time we were supposed to go on the trip. So when they said, no, we are going to go, it was like so strange in some ways. And in a way, Wolf and I thought, even though we're 16-year-old kids, we felt like it was our responsibility to just go along with it. Like that cabin was so tied to, like they loved it there. That was like their place. And so it almost felt like we're just going to go to a place that he loved, that's very important to the mom, to the family, and it is what it is. So we're talking, no one's been to the cabin after his father has died.
Got it. I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole of all the stories I've read, and I'm sure you've also read about whenever there is something like supernatural or I would say spiritual, ghosts, things like that. There's sometimes a location assigned to it. With the military, sometimes it's an aircraft frame. Like the aircraft is completely stripped, but that airframe, they put it in a museum and it still has weird stuff happening around it. So that there's an emotional aspect to the cabin, which might explain why, even though he probably didn't pass away at the cabin, right? It's like he passed away somewhere hours away, but then the whole spiritual thing happened there. So, but what this leads me to is to point out that since nobody had been to that cabin, this is the first time that this specter, this very tall shadow thing, this ghost, whatever, has visited this cabin. That first night that you were there, because you're the only person there to witness it, like that's the first time. And what kind of spooked me when I started thinking about it was just that she never sees the shadow figure. She just hears all these things and is up there awake like you are thinking, my husband is walking into the house. He's knocked over a pot. Now he's walking to the boys' room. Like at no point does she ever become worried about some intruder breaking in. She's just listening there, staying in bed. And she never gets any visual confirmation of what's actually happening.
Yeah, to be honest, dude, I at the time, that day, when she was like, don't worry, I heard him too, when I hadn't given her any context. I looked, I'm sure, very concerned. I looked definitely like I hadn't slept, but I hadn't said anything I had seen or felt or anything. It was just like, hey, did like one of your other sons come through? She sort of half answered, and then she just says, I heard it too. The way I reacted was fear. How could you possibly know anything? But then it was like, her husband has died days ago.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. It was almost like I felt like she was lying to me. I felt like she was acting and like seeing an opportunity to, I hate to say it, but like pretend her husband was here. But I didn't say, hey, I heard something walking around the cabin last night. But at the time, my gut reaction is, this is a woman she's grieving. She must have just picked up on the fact that I had some sort of awful experience last night, maybe a nightmare, and somehow she was like, that was my husband. That's night one.
Yeah.
By the end of this experience, when we see the etching in the table, and really actually before that, on the second day where I did tell her what was going on, I came into the kitchen and I told her all the details, and she basically had the same reaction of like, don't worry, it's just my husband. I heard him too. No big deal. That's when it became more real for me. It's like, oh my God, like how the fuck could she have come up with that when I didn't tell her what happened? How could she have like known so quickly in that first morning to latch on to this idea that like something was in the cabin and it's my dead husband? And then to your point too, you're right. What was she doing? Was she laying in her bed? Like, oh, no big deal. Like you said, like I could be an intruder.
Yeah.
Could be a spirit. I don't know. But like the whole thing is just sort of crazy.
I don't mean to laugh, but that
no, it is. It
could be an intruder. It could be a spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the two. We'll see.
It's just it was just the thought that if she's up there awake, and again, if she ever hears this, I'm not here to disparage her or make fun of her or say anything like that. I'm just saying that clearly, if she was kind of had a sense, it's just that she heard what it was. Maybe initially, maybe she thought it was her son, and then the way things shaked out, I guess nobody closed the door. Was the house just freezing cold the next morning? Like the door's hanging open all night?
Or maybe she woke up and shut it because she knew, quote, it was her husband. That's the part that I always assumed, that at some point she must have shut it. But I never asked her because I had so many thoughts at the time and frankly hated talking to her. It was quite, dude, it was like, so the thing is
it was just
now
creepy.
In retrospect, it's like really this sort of crazy story, but at the time, it just felt like, what is happening to my life? Like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. The level of fear was so high, it like clouded my judgment on everything. And so like, there are things I should have asked. Hey, so what do you mean it's your husband? Like, literally, did you go downstairs? Did you see him? Did you shut the door? Did you pick up the pot? Like, am I misremembering? Am I feeding this woman a ghost story that she's latched onto and attributing to her dead? There was just a lot of fear around really dissecting the story, in fear of being offensive to her because she just lost her husband, and frankly, fear of what she might say.
Yeah. These questions didn't come to mind. Yeah. Have you ever wondered if, because the first night it happened, there was nothing that probably really gave any reason for this to happen to you specifically. You're not somebody who's seen these things before.
No.
Have you ever wondered that if maybe you hadn't been there to witness it, if that still would have happened? Like a tree falling in the woods sort of thing. Like
I've sort of allowed myself to believe that if this was in fact a spirit, and if it was in fact Nick's father, it just sort of felt like it was like he was coming to say bye to his family, maybe. And then not to be like sort of stereotypical ghost story or whatever, I don't even know, but it seemed like this was something I witnessed but did not cause. And so I think it probably would have happened without me there.
So like if Nick had been there but not you, he was there to see Nick. That's why he gave no mind to you.
I think that's right. I think that I happened to witness something.
Yeah. Which then, I guess, final question. Where are you at with this now? Do you still feel like you'd want if there was an explanation available, do you think you'd want it?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And to be honest, dude, like it actually is just sort of happenstance that I had this experience happen to me. And I also tell strange, dark, and mysterious stories for a living. Like one did not lead to the other. It just sort of happened that I had this experience that lent itself really well to these types of stories. So I've told it on my channel and I've told it in live events and whatever. But the reality is like, it's not my origin story for how I became Mr. Ballin. In reality, it's like a pretty traumatic thing that happened to me that sort of fits the genre of Mr. Ballin. So I've shared it.
Yeah. Deep
down, I would love to know what happened, and not because I want it or expect it to be supernatural or paranormal or something, but because it's like a great mystery in my life. I go back and forth. Like, is this something that was entirely a figment of my imagination? which seems nearly impossible because it had so many real world implications and ramifications. Is it possible that I do sleepwalk? I'm a sleepwalk. I sleepwalk a lot, actually. Like, is this somehow tied to that? Did I get up and move around like in the middle of the night that first night? And did Nick's mom see me? And that's how she had the context by the morning when I acted really, I don't know. Like, but ultimately, I'd love to know what happened, even if it's the most, well, I don't know if it'd be a mundane explanation, because whatever explanation it would be, I'm sure it would be interesting, but I would love to know.
Have you ever thought what would be like the worst case? What would scare you the most?
That it was a spirit that bowed into my friend and dissipated into the floor and wandered around the cabin. I think that like the thing that in some ways makes for the best story, because it's terrifying. And, you know, it's easy to, when you haven't experienced it yourself, to like think how cool it is or how crazy it is to hear a story like that. But when it happened to me, like, it was so deeply horrifying because it felt real. And so I think if I learned, that entire experience where you had primal fear because there's like a spirit in your room, you know, that really happened, I think it would just sort of completely rock my world. Even though in some ways I've sort of accepted that could have been the reality this whole time, but I've allowed myself to believe that maybe there's something totally rational that would explain it all away. If that was removed and I'm just left with like the raw, scary version, I think that'd be pretty unsettling, even though I've been grappling with it for 20 years.
Yeah. Because this, I mean, in your life, this is one of those experiences that kind of creates the question in your mind, is the world what we see, or is there maybe more to it? It's like the Matrix. It's like, is there something unseen?
Exactly. That's a great way to put a cap on that.
Yeah. And do you have any final thoughts about like your current beliefs about the spiritual realm or what ghosts are or anything like that?
I think that I'm increasingly more skeptical, mostly because, and I'm sure you can relate to this to some degree, you know, in virtue of covering lots of stories that do touch on things that are purportedly supernatural. You know, there's just a lot of stuff that's clearly fake, and there's a lot of stuff that's been doctored and sort of made up, that it's rare to come across things, at least testimony or stories that are like truly credible. Whether or not they're true remains to be seen, but like really credible supernatural paranormal stuff is few and far between. And I think it's made me more skeptical, not less, but it has not made me any less of like a potential believer. I've potentially experienced it directly, but it doesn't mean I look at every weird thing and think, oh my God, ghosts, aliens, you know what I mean? It's more like it totally could be, but I remain, you know, it remains to be seen if we have absolute proof. But I love the idea that there's more than meets the eye. I really do.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for your time, John. Really appreciate it again.
Yeah, no, dude, absolutely. Didn't think I was deserving of a thank you, but I'll take it.
See, I knew you were a humble guy. Well,
can't wait to listen to the episode in its entirety.
Awesome. Appreciate your time, brother. We'll talk soon, I hope.
Yeah, dude.
Bye.
See ya.
Wartime Stories is created and hosted by me, Luke LaManna. Written by Jake Howard and myself. Audio editing, sound design, mixing, mastering, and production coordination by Alex Carpenter, with additional audio work by me. Animation and motion design by Hot Sauce Video. Research by Jake Howard and myself. Artwork by Pikata and Radomir Izgarovic. Once again, just wanted to say thank you to John and the whole team over at Ballin Studios for all of their incredible support that they've offered Wartime Stories the last couple of years. And as always, a huge shout out to both our patrons, our YouTube channel members, everybody and anybody commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, everything you guys do that helps keep this show going. We really appreciate it. May God be with each and every one of you, no matter what you're dealing with. And I will see you in the next episode.